Sarah Martinez had always believed that serving her country meant more than just following orders. Standing at barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, with determination burning in her dark eyes, she had worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove herself worthy of wearing the uniform. The year was 2003, and women in combat roles were still fighting an uphill battle for recognition and respect. The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Victory in Baghdad as Sarah adjusted her helmet and checked her watch. She had been assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division as a supply sergeant, a role that many dismissed as mundane. But Sarah knew better. In a war zone, every job mattered, and she took pride in ensuring that soldiers received what they needed to survive another day. Colonel James Harrison had made it clear from day one that he expected nothing less than perfection from his unit. A stern man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, he commanded respect through his presence alone. When he called Sarah into his office that Tuesday morning, she assumed it was for another routine assignment. "Martinez, I have a special task for you," Colonel Harrison said, not looking up from the papers scattered across his desk. "The generals are meeting in the secure compound this week. They need someone reliable to handle meal service during their sessions. I'm assigning you to this duty." Sarah felt her heart sink slightly. After months of proving herself capable of handling complex logistics and supply chain operations, she was being asked to serve food. But she had learned never to question orders, especially not in front of Colonel Harrison. "Yes, sir. When do I start?" she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Tomorrow at 0600 hours. Report to Sergeant Williams for briefing. And Martinez." He paused, finally looking up at her. "This is important. These meetings involve high-level strategic discussions. Discretion is absolutely essential." As Sarah left the colonel's office, she couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment was somehow different from her usual duties. The secure compound was where the most important decisions were made, where generals planned operations that could change the course of the war. She wondered why Colonel Harrison had chosen her specifically for this role. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the compound kitchen before dawn. Sergeant Williams, a weathered man in his 50s, was already preparing breakfast for the day's meetings. The kitchen was spotless, with industrial-grade equipment that seemed almost too sophisticated for a military base. "Martinez, right?" Sergeant Williams asked, wiping his hands on a clean towel. "Colonel Harrison says you're taking over meal service for the brass. This isn't like serving regular troops. Everything has to be perfect. Timing, presentation, temperature. These generals notice everything." Sarah nodded, absorbing every detail as Sergeant Williams explained the routine. Breakfast was served at 0700 sharp, lunch at 1200, and dinner at 1900. The meals were prepared according to strict guidelines, and she would be responsible for serving each course personally. "One more thing," Sergeant Williams added, lowering his voice. "You don't speak unless spoken to. You serve the food, refill drinks, and stay invisible. These men are discussing matters of national security. Your job is to be professional and unnoticed." The first day of serving went exactly as planned. Sarah entered the meeting room with practiced precision, placing plates in front of each general without making a sound. The room was filled with maps, charts, and the quiet intensity of men making life-and-death decisions. She moved like a shadow, refilling coffee cups and clearing dishes, while the generals discussed troop movements and strategic operations. General Robert Thompson, a man with kind eyes and graying temples, seemed to be leading most of the discussions. He spoke with authority, but treated everyone in the room with respect. Sarah noticed how he always thanked her quietly when she refilled his coffee, a small gesture that many others overlooked. General Michael Chen, younger than the others but equally respected, had a sharp analytical mind that impressed Sarah as she overheard fragments of their conversations. He questioned every detail and pushed for innovative solutions to complex problems. General Patricia Rodriguez, the only woman among the senior officers, commanded the room with her presence and strategic insights that often shifted the direction of their discussions. As the days passed, Sarah began to understand the weight of responsibility these officers carried. She saw the exhaustion in their eyes after long planning sessions, the tension when difficult decisions had to be made, and the relief when breakthrough solutions emerged. Her role as meal server had given her a unique window into the highest levels of military leadership. On Friday of her first week, something unexpected happened. As Sarah was clearing lunch dishes, General Thompson's coffee cup slipped from her tray and shattered on the floor. The room fell silent as she immediately dropped to her knees to clean up the mess, her face burning with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, sir. It won't happen again," she whispered, quickly gathering the broken pieces. General Thompson stood up and walked over to where she was kneeling. "Sergeant, accidents happen. Please, let me help you." Sarah looked up in surprise as the general knelt beside her, helping to collect the fragments. It was then that his eyes fell upon something that made him pause. Pinned to her uniform, partially hidden by her service ribbons, was a small silver star that most people never noticed. The general's expression changed from casual kindness to something deeper, more recognizing. He studied the medal for a moment, then looked directly into Sarah's eyes with a new understanding. "Sergeant Martinez," he said quietly, so only she could hear, "I believe we need to have a conversation." Sarah's heart raced as she realized that her carefully hidden past was about to be revealed. The silver star she wore represented something she had tried to keep private, something that could change everything about her current assignment. As she met General Thompson's knowing gaze, she understood that her days of serving meals in anonymity were coming to an end. The other generals continued their discussion, unaware of the significant moment unfolding in their midst. But General Thompson had seen something that would soon transform not only Sarah's role in the military, but also the course of the critical mission they were planning. As they stood up together, Sarah knew that whatever came next would test everything she had learned about courage, duty, and the true meaning of service. The silver star on her uniform was about to tell a story she had hoped to keep buried, but perhaps it was time for that story to finally be heard. That evening, General Thompson requested a private meeting with Sarah in his temporary office. The small room was functional and sparse, with only a desk, 2 chairs, and a map of Iraq covering one wall. Sarah stood at attention, uncertain about what to expect. "At ease, Sergeant. Please have a seat," General Thompson said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His demeanor was warm but serious, and Sarah could see genuine interest in his eyes. "Sir, if this is about the broken coffee cup, I take full responsibility and—" General Thompson raised his hand gently to stop her. "This has nothing to do with the accident, Sergeant Martinez. I noticed the silver star on your uniform today. That's not something that's awarded lightly, and I'm curious about the story behind it." Sarah's chest tightened. The silver star was her most treasured possession, but it represented a chapter of her life that brought both pride and painful memories. She had hoped to serve quietly without drawing attention to her past heroics. "Sir, it was just doing my job," she replied, the standard response she had practiced dozens of times. "I've heard that before, usually from the most extraordinary soldiers." General Thompson smiled. "I did some research this afternoon. Sergeant Sarah Martinez distinguished herself during Operation Iraqi Freedom, March 2003, rescued 6 wounded soldiers under heavy enemy fire when their convoy was ambushed outside Nasiriyah. Is that correct?" Sarah nodded slowly, the memories flooding back despite her efforts to keep them buried. "Yes, sir." "The report says you drove a damaged Humvee through crossfire 3 times to evacuate wounded personnel, even after taking shrapnel in your shoulder. You saved 6 lives that day, including a young lieutenant who was bleeding out." The images came rushing back. The sound of gunfire, the smell of smoke, the desperate cries for help. Sarah remembered the weight of each wounded soldier as she dragged them to safety. The burning pain in her shoulder that she ignored until everyone was secure. She had done what needed to be done, nothing more. "Sir, anyone would have done the same thing," Sarah said quietly. "No, Sergeant, they wouldn't have. And that's exactly why I need to ask you something important." General Thompson leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. We're planning a critical operation, and after seeing your record and observing you this week, I believe you're exactly the person we need." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Sir? There's a situation developing north of Baghdad. Intelligence indicates that a high-value target is being held in a compound approximately 40 miles from here. The problem is that the compound is heavily guarded, and traditional assault approaches would likely result in the target's execution before we could reach them." General Thompson stood and moved to the map on the wall, pointing to a marked location. "This is where we believe Captain David Morrison is being held. He was captured 3 weeks ago during a reconnaissance mission. Captain Morrison has critical information about enemy operations that could save hundreds of American lives." Sarah studied the map, her military training automatically analyzing the terrain and potential approach routes. "Sir, what does this have to do with me?" "The compound has a weakness. They're expecting a supply delivery next Tuesday. A local Iraqi woman has been bringing food and basic necessities to the guards for months. Our intelligence sources have confirmed this pattern." General Thompson turned back to face her. "We need someone who can get close to that compound without raising suspicion. Someone with the skills, courage, and quick thinking to handle the unexpected." The implication hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Sir, you want me to impersonate this woman?" "Not exactly. She's been compromised, unfortunately captured by enemy forces 2 days ago. But her delivery route and timing are still expected by the guards. We need someone who can use that window of opportunity to get inside, locate Captain Morrison, and signal our extraction team." Sarah's mind raced through the countless things that could go wrong with such a plan. "Sir, with respect, wouldn't a special operations team be better suited for this mission?" "Under normal circumstances, yes. But this situation requires a different approach. The guards know to expect a woman delivering supplies. A special ops team would be detected immediately. We need someone who can blend in, think on their feet, and handle combat situations if necessary." General Thompson's voice carried the weight of command, but also a note of personal appeal. "Your service record shows you can do all of those things. What about language barriers? I speak limited Arabic." "We have an interpreter who will be positioned nearby. You'll also have communication equipment disguised as typical women's accessories. The technical details will be handled by our intelligence team." Sarah stood and walked to the map, studying the marked compound. The tactical part of her mind was already working through possibilities and contingencies. But another part of her, the part that still woke up sometimes hearing the sounds of gunfire from that day in Nasiriyah, wondered if she was ready for another dangerous mission. "Sir, may I ask why you chose me specifically? There must be other qualified personnel." General Thompson was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "This week, I've watched you work. You're professional, observant, and you adapt quickly to different situations. But more importantly, you have something that can't be taught. You have the courage to act when others might hesitate, and the judgment to make the right decisions under pressure." He paused, then continued. "Captain Morrison is 24 years old. He has a wife and a 2-year-old daughter back in Texas. The intelligence he carries could prevent an attack on one of our forward bases where over 300 soldiers are stationed. This isn't just about one person, Sergeant. This is about bringing everyone home safely." Sarah felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She thought about the young lieutenant she had saved in Nasiriyah, how his mother had written to thank her for giving her son a chance to come home. She thought about Captain Morrison's family, waiting for news that might never come. "What's the timeline for this operation?" she asked. 48 hours. The supply delivery is expected Tuesday morning at 800 local time. We'll have extraction teams positioned within a 3-mile radius, ready to move on your signal. And if something goes wrong, General Thompson's expression became grave. Then you do what you've always done, Sergeant. You adapt, you survive, and you complete the mission. Sarah looked at the silver star reflected in the glass covering the map. She had earned that medal by refusing to abandon fellow soldiers in danger. Now she was being asked to risk everything again, not just for one person, but for hundreds of others who might never know her name. "I'll need detailed intelligence on the compound layout, guard rotations, and extraction protocols," she said, her voice steady and professional. General Thompson smiled, a mixture of relief and pride crossing his face. "I'll have everything ready for your briefing tomorrow morning. Sergeant Martinez, I want you to know that this is completely voluntary. No one would question your decision if you chose not to accept this mission." Sarah straightened her shoulders and looked directly into the general's eyes. "Sir, with respect, that was never really an option. When do we start planning?" As they shook hands, Sarah realized that her life was about to change dramatically once again. The quiet days of serving meals and staying invisible were over. In 48 hours, she would be walking into one of the most dangerous situations imaginable, carrying the hopes of a captured soldier and the lives of hundreds of others on her shoulders. But as she left General Thompson's office that night, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, a sense of purpose that went beyond following orders. She was about to prove once again that heroism came in many forms, and sometimes the most important battles were fought by those who were willing to step forward when no one else could. Tuesday morning arrived with an unusual calmness that made Sarah's nerves feel even more heightened. She had spent the previous 2 days in intensive preparation, studying compound layouts, memorizing guard schedules, and practicing with the specialized equipment that would be hidden within her disguise. The transformation from American soldier to Iraqi civilian was remarkable, accomplished through careful attention to clothing, makeup, and mannerisms that the intelligence team had spent months documenting. At 05:30 hours, Sarah stood in the preparation tent, looking at herself in a small mirror. The traditional Iraqi dress felt foreign against her skin, but the intelligence team had assured her that every detail was authentic. Hidden within the fabric were communication devices, a GPS tracker, and a small medical kit. Most importantly, concealed beneath the loose clothing, she carried a compact sidearm and emergency signaling device. "Remember, the guards expect a delivery between Oro 800 and Oro 830, Captain Williams from Intelligence said, reviewing the plan one final time. "The real supplier always brought food for 8 guards, enough for their morning and midday meals. Your job is to get inside, locate Captain Morrison, and activate the signal device when you're ready for extraction." Sarah nodded, adjusting the headscarf that partially concealed the tiny earpiece that would keep her connected to the command post. "What if the layout is different from what we expected? Trust your training and your instincts. You've proven you can adapt under pressure." Captain Williams handed her a worn leather bag filled with carefully prepared food items. "The extraction team will be monitoring your location constantly. The moment you signal, they'll be moving." At 0700 hours, Sarah climbed into the battered pickup truck that would take her to within walking distance of the compound. The driver, a trusted Iraqi informant named Ahmed, spoke minimal English, but his nervous energy was unmistakable. They both understood the risks involved if they were discovered. The drive through the countryside was tense and surreal. Sarah watched the landscape pass by, mentally rehearsing every detail of her mission. She thought about Captain Morrison. Somewhere in that compound, possibly injured or worse. She thought about his family back home, waiting for news. Most of all, she thought about the hundreds of soldiers whose lives might depend on the intelligence he carried. 20 minutes later, Ahmed stopped the truck beside a dusty road, approximately half a mile from the target compound. Allah ma'aki, he whispered, wishing her luck in Arabic before she stepped out. Sarah began the walk toward the compound, carrying the heavy bag of food and trying to project the casual confidence of someone who had made this journey many times before. The morning sun was already hot, and sweat began to collect beneath her disguise, but she forced herself to maintain a steady pace. As the compound came into view, Sarah could see that the intelligence reports had been accurate. A rectangular building surrounded by high walls, with guard towers at two corners and a main gate that appeared to be the only entrance. She counted 4 guards visible from her position, which matched the expected number for the morning shift. Approaching the gate, Sarah called out in basic Arabic, announcing her delivery as she had been coached. The guards looked tired and bored, exactly what the intelligence team had hoped for. One of them, a young man barely out of his teens, walked over to examine her bag while another watched from a distance. "Tardier," he said, commenting that she was late. Sarah nodded apologetically and gestured toward the road, implying that she had encountered delays during her journey. The guard seemed satisfied with this explanation and motioned for her to follow him into the compound. Inside the walls, Sarah quickly scanned her surroundings, comparing what she saw to the satellite images she had studied. The main building had 2 levels, with what appeared to be living quarters on the upper floor and storage areas below. She could see additional guards moving about, some preparing for a shift change. The guard led her toward a small kitchen area where she was expected to prepare the morning meal. As she began unpacking food items, Sarah listened carefully to conversations around her, picking up fragments in Arabic that might provide useful information about Captain Morrison's location. After 20 minutes of food preparation, Sarah asked in broken Arabic if she could use a bathroom, a request that had been anticipated as a way to explore the building. The guard pointed toward the main structure, giving her the opportunity she needed. Moving through the building, Sarah's training kicked in as she mentally mapped the layout and noted guard positions. On the upper floor, she found a hallway with several locked doors. Behind one of them, she could hear the faint sound of someone moving. Checking to ensure no guards were watching, Sarah approached the door and whispered in English, "Captain Morrison?" The movement inside stopped. Then a weak voice responded, "Who's there?" "I'm here to get you out. Stay quiet and be ready to move." Sarah quickly examined the door lock, a simple mechanism that she could bypass with a small tool hidden in her headscarf. Within seconds, the door swung open to reveal a young officer who was obviously injured but alert. Captain Morrison was exactly as described, though thinner and bearing signs of rough treatment. His left arm was in a makeshift sling, and there were bruises on his face, but his eyes showed intelligence and determination. "Are you American military?" he whispered. "Sergeant Sarah Martinez, 3rd Infantry Division? We're getting you out of here." "There are 8 guards total, 2 shift changes per day," Morrison said quickly, providing tactical information. "They're expecting a weapons delivery this afternoon. The information you need is in my boot, encrypted flash drive." Sarah helped Morrison to his feet, impressed by his presence of mind despite his condition. "Can you walk?" "I'll do whatever it takes to get out of here." Sarah activated her signaling device, sending a coded message to the extraction team that she had located the target and was ready for pickup. According to the plan, they had approximately 8 minutes before the team would arrive. Moving carefully back through the building, Sarah and Morrison had almost reached the ground floor when they encountered a problem. The guard who had escorted Sarah inside was looking for her, probably wondering why she was taking so long with the bathroom break. Thinking quickly, Sarah positioned Morrison behind a stack of supply boxes and walked out to meet the guard. She gestured toward the kitchen, indicating that she needed to finish preparing the meal. The guard looked suspicious, but didn't immediately raise an alarm. For 5 crucial minutes, Sarah continued the pretense of meal preparation while Morrison remained hidden nearby. She could hear the sound of approaching helicopters in the distance, barely audible but growing stronger. When the extraction team's arrival became unmistakable, Sarah knew their window for stealth was closing. She caught Morrison's attention and signaled toward a side door that led to the compound's outer wall. The next few minutes unfolded like controlled chaos. As the helicopters became visible, the guards realized what was happening and began shouting orders. Sarah and Morrison ran toward the extraction point while gunfire erupted around them. Sarah's training from Nasiriyah kicked in automatically. She half-carried Morrison when his injured leg slowed their progress, shielding him from debris as explosions echoed through the compound. The extraction team had created multiple diversions to confuse the guards and provide cover for their escape. Reaching the designated pickup zone, Sarah saw the rescue helicopter touching down just as they arrived. Strong hands pulled both of them aboard as the aircraft immediately lifted off, carrying them away from the compound and toward safety. During the flight back to base, Captain Morrison handed Sarah the encrypted flash drive that contained intelligence about planned attacks on American positions. "This information could save a lot of lives," he said, his voice barely audible over the helicopter noise. 3 days later, Sarah stood once again in General Thompson's office, this time wearing her dress uniform with the silver star prominently displayed. The intelligence from Captain Morrison's flash drive had indeed prevented a major attack, and Sarah's successful rescue mission had earned her a promotion and a new assignment to Special Operations Planning. "Sergeant Martinez," General Thompson said, "your service record now includes not 1, but 2 extraordinary acts of heroism. What you did took courage that goes beyond the call of duty." Sarah looked out the window at the base where soldiers went about their daily routines, many of them unaware of how close they had come to danger. "Sir, I was just doing my job, but I learned something important during this mission." "What's that, Sergeant?" "Sometimes the most important service happens when nobody's watching. Whether it's serving meals to planning officers or rescuing captured soldiers, every role matters if you approach it with the right attitude." General Thompson smiled. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need in special operations. Your new assignment will involve training other soldiers in unconventional warfare techniques. You'll be helping to prepare the next generation of heroes." As Sarah left the general's office that day, she realized that her journey from meal server to rescue specialist had taught her something valuable about leadership and courage. True service wasn't about recognition or glory. It was about being willing to step forward when others needed help, whether that meant refilling coffee cups during strategic planning sessions or risking everything to bring a fellow soldier home. The silver star on her uniform would always remind her of that day in Nasiriyah, when she first learned what it meant to put others before herself. But now she also carried the memory of Captain Morrison's rescue, another chapter in a career dedicated to ensuring that no one was left behind. Years later, when she became a colonel herself, Sarah would tell young officers that heroism came in many forms. Sometimes it was dramatic and recognized with medals, but often it was quiet and unnoticed, performed by people who simply did what needed to be done because it was right. Her story became legend within the special operations community, not just because of what she accomplished, but because of how she approached every assignment with the same level of dedication. From serving meals to saving lives, Sarah Martinez had proven that true leadership meant being ready to serve wherever and however you were needed most.